G'day ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Draw with Jazza. I'm Jazza and this is the Let's Draw live video this week, where in the live stream people have made their requests and the winning request has been requested by Nick, and it is Khaleesi from Game of Thrones. So today we're going to be drawing Khaleesi. So because I'm drawing a character that is represented by an actual person in a show in Game of Thrones, I'm going to want to use that as a base sort of reference. I'm still going to do my more cartoony-ish style, and I'm just going to sort out the pose first, and then I'm going to use references to get the facial features and expression and everything to a place where it's a little more fitting for, you know, the show itself. So I'm just going to start off with a bit of blocking. I'm just using a normal run-of-the-mill mechanical pencil. I draw little circles for shoulders, and then I draw the breasts on top of that torso shape that I've just drawn. I'm going to be drawing her arms like this. She's going to be kind of holding a baby dragon in her arms, and she's going to have a dragon here and a dragon here. So she's going to have 3 dragons around her. So I tend to, after I sketch the circles for the shoulders, just draw lines for where the arms will be positioned. And when I'm happy with how the positioning looks, I start to put some meat on the bones. I start to thicken it up and add the shape of the actual limb. So that's basically as far as I go with detail at the start. For the face, I think the head is too far forward, so I'm going to just lightly erase it where it was, and I'm just going to move it back like this, and then lightly rough in where the hair sort of will flow. I'm not going to be too detailed, and I'm just going to lightly also do where the dragons will go. So I've got one over here, and I'm just, similarly to how I drew the arms just with a line, I'm just going to really roughly do a line for how the bodies of the dragons will curve. So that's basically how the dragons are going to look. We've got these little S's, and I'm going to add heads to them. So they're going to have big open mouths. Except for this one, I'm just going to have this one a straight head. The horns back there. And this one will have a nice big open mouth. And I'm going to position some wings. So let's, with this one, have the wings kind of up like this. Okay, so I've got the basics of the whole thing figured out, and now I'm just going to start adding detail. Now in adding detail, luckily I have references because the Game of Thrones TV show is quite popular, and Daenerys Targaryen is an actual actor who plays this character that is very recognizable. So I'm going to be using her image as something of a reference and going through and refining my details now. So I've got my illustration now to the point where I'm quite happy with it, and I'm ready to move past this whole roughing it all out and starting to refine the details phase. So what I'll be doing next is using a fine liner and going around all of the major edges. Now I'm just going to recap a little bit as to my approach when I drew this. When drawing the face, because I had someone to base it off, I would look up pictures of her, which I have as a reference here on my screen, and some of the key things to try and represent, one of which I didn't do very well, which is the nose, so let me just redo that, just features of the face, in particular the shape of the head, so the face itself, how the cheekbones sit and flow into the chin and the forehead, and how it dips in the eye socket, as well as things like eye shape and mouth shape. and nose as well. So there's some sort of things to keep in mind. I'm happy with the mouth, but it's a little bit too low, so I'm actually just going to lightly erase it and bring it up a little bit, and then I'm going to move forward with the line work part of the image. So let's get that happening. Okay, so I'm happy with how this is turning out so far. I've done all of this in 0.1 fine liner, and now I'm going to go through, make sure it's dry, and use an eraser, and you'll see how very quickly, as I erase all of my construction line work, the piece becomes a mixture of both much simpler and more streamlined, but also kind of lacks depth a bit. So in taking this away, we give the whole piece a lot more cleanliness, and it's like we've got this fresh start, and it's much more refined, but the shading that we had in places is missing. So what we're going to do is two things. We're going to use this 0.1 fine liner to add some shading in areas, for example, under the breasts, under the chin, in parts of the hair, parts of the dragons, add some details, and then we're going to use a thicker fine liner, this 0.5, and add a thicker edge around parts of the silhouette to really accentuate the shapes around the edges, and that will really give the whole piece a lot more pop. So there we go, ladies and gentlemen. That is Khaleesi, Daenerys Targaryen from Game of Thrones. And as you can see, the last thing that I had done was use the 0.1 to do the shading, and I did it all in the one direction. And there are several ways of using line art to shade. Sometimes you can do cross-hatching, which is where you kind of cross in opposite directions. Sometimes you can do a little more scribbly. And I used just the one direction in this piece just because it gives a little bit more of a uniform look. I kind of wanted a look that was almost kind of tattoo-esque. It kind of would hold its own. There's just this little thing here I wanted to do. The mouth kind of was misshapen at the very start when I did the thicker line work, so I had to use a little bit of this magic whiteout, unfortunately, and then I tried to fix it as best as I could. So, you know, there are little imperfections, but overall I'm happy with how the piece turned out. And of course, as I tend to always do, I went over the piece with a thicker line marker around the silhouette areas to kind of add that extra outline and really make the piece pop and speak for itself. And that tends to be something I do all the time, especially in traditional art, because it really helps the whole thing kind of stand out on its own. And especially when you go out on the areas like this, on this left edge of the Khaleesi character. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this Let's Draw video. Of course, the final part of this whole thing is the dedication. This was requested by Nick, so I'm going to say to Nick. Thank you very much for joining me, ladies and gentlemen, and until next time, I'll see you later.